Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
I know, I'm so excited too. And we're actually, you guys, Lisa and I are actually sitting in the same room today because she is just right outside of Denver and we are in Colorado Springs. Mm-hmm. So it's so fun to have you like in person.
Thank you.
Fun. Okay, so Lisa, we know Jack Phillips' story, and Jack is your dad.
Yes.
And for those of you who don't know, we're talking about Jack Phillips, the cake maker, the cake baker in Denver, who got in so much trouble because he stood for truth and he stood on his convictions. And we'll get more into that story in a minute. But the Colson Center is huge fans of you guys, your family, Jack's courage. But I thought it would be so fun just to hear your side of the story as the daughter who's very much involved in the whole process. So tell us about that day, the day that things changed in your family.
Yeah. Well, it was just a regular day. It was busy. There were enough customers that normally, there were a few of us girls working at the counter, and normally one of us would, if somebody came in to get a wedding cake or anything, we had a special desk where we would take them over to so they could look at different design ideas and we could sit down and talk with them. So normally if somebody came in, one of us would help them. But on this particular day, it was really busy. And so we were all busy with customers, and two gentlemen walked in, and I kind of motioned to my dad because they were kind of headed over to the desk, but I kind of motioned like, hey, do you mind helping them because we can't get away? And that didn't mean anything that they were coming in to get a wedding cake for themselves. You just don't know. It could have been two brothers getting an anniversary cake for their parents, or you just don't know. But you don't know people's stories when they walk in. So they were walking over to the desk, so my dad went over to go help them. And he went around to his side of the desk. They all shook hands and like, hey, I'm David, I'm Charlie. And he's like, hey guys, well, what can I do for you? And they're like, well, we need a wedding cake. We're getting married. And my dad's like, oh, I'm sorry guys, I don't make cakes for same-sex weddings. And they're like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, I can make you, anything that we have in the store, like retirement, birthday cakes, but I just don't make cakes for same-sex weddings. So you can see it's a very small, concise conversation. It was really short. And so that, of course, upset them that he wouldn't make the cake that they had requested. And so they stood up. One swore at him. One flipped him off. They walked out the doors. And I'm standing over at our counter and, I'm helping somebody else, but I'm definitely noticing something crazy is going on over here. And so my dad walks over and I look at him and, we're away from each other. Too many people can't really talk, but he just gives me this look like, that was weird. And I'm like, yeah. So, but to give you an idea, we had turned down same-sex wedding cakes before. This wasn't the first time. It's not something that happens very often. But when my parents first opened up our cake shop, they had three main things that they wanted to make sure were standards in our shop, besides serving God in all we did. But they wanted to, they weren't going to make cakes for Halloween, any Halloween decorations or anything, just because we don't celebrate Halloween, just don't see it as something Jesus would do. And then they weren't going to make cakes with alcohol in them because, back in the 90s, rum cakes, things like that were still a pretty big thing. And then they weren't going to make cakes for same-sex weddings. And that was before it was even on the radar. It was back in 93. So it wasn't...
That's when they set all those
That's when
precedent.
They set... Yeah. So it wasn't like this big thing that they had to decide right then.
Right, because they had already set that. What year was this when those two...
When the two gentlemen came in was 2012. July 19th, 2012.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So this opened up a whole thing for your family who, this is a family business. Yeah. It's a small shop, really. It's just in a strip mall. Nobody had really heard about it except local people until that day.
Right.
And so keep unfolding the story for us.
Yeah. So we gave that look to each other, and then pretty soon the phone rang. And people started calling, and I remember he got a phone call from one of their moms that had actually come in with them. And she asked him, are you the cake shop that just turned away the two gay gentlemen and whatever? And my dad's like, I didn't turn anybody away. I just couldn't make the cake that they were asking for. And it was basically okay, and hung up. And then he just started getting hate calls like, pick up the phone and there's not even a chance for him to say Masterpiece Cake Shop or anything. They were already spitting through the phone, basically, just the worst things you can think of. So pretty quick, my dad said, girls, because normally we would answer the phone as well. He's like, girls, I don't want any of you answering the phone. I will answer the phone from here on. And even to this day, my dad still is the one who answers the phone. And it's been just over 13 years. And he still, just because, he just to protect us, because the stuff coming through the phone was nothing he wanted us to hear.
Yeah.
And so normally my dad would answer the phone, even if he's there and it's 9:00 at night. If somebody called, he'd still answer. If he's there, doors are unlocked, he's open. On this day, though, at 6:00, our hours were 7 to 6 back then. But at this day, at 6:00, he stopped answering the phone. Doors were locked. Like, that was enough for today. You can only do so much in one day. And he's like, so that was the initial day of everything starting. And my dad drove home from work that night, just like, I can imagine what he was feeling because I know him so well, but just how intense everything laying on him, they hate me so much. And he had to run to the grocery store on his way home. And he says he remembers getting out and going into the store and just thinking, everybody here hates me. They hate me. Everybody hates me. Right. And of course, nobody there hated him. And he said that he remembered God telling him, they don't hate you. They hate me, and he remembered the verse that God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of a sound mind. And he said it was the sound mind part that got him, like that he doesn't need to worry about this. He doesn't need to be afraid of it. He has a sound mind. God has given him that, and God will take care of everything. And ever since then, 13 years later, he's chill. And he always was a very chill, calm guy. Actually, I think when I got to speak at Colson Fellows for the Wilberforce, for that.
Which you did a great job.
Thank you. Yes. That was so much fun. That's when I discovered I love doing this. Anyways. Yeah. But I got to say, and the best thing I could think of to talk about my dad was he's a jeans and t-shirt guy. Always has been, super laid back. Nothing really upsets him. He gets excited, but he doesn't ever get like so down, or he's just even easy going. Yeah. And that's how he always was until this day. And then only for that day was he ruffled a bit. Right. And then God's like, nah, they hate me, not you. Right. It's cool. I got this. Right. And he's just been calm and okay to take it since then. So
it didn't surprise you that he was like, I got to stand strong. Yeah.
No. Okay. Both of my parents throughout my life have had to take stands. This was just the first time the rest of the world knew about it.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah. Tell me about your mom at this pivot here.
So my mom is the opposite of my dad, which usually happens in marriages. And
it's funny how that happens.
Yeah. She's happy to work in the office in the back of our shop, and only on desperate occasions does she come up and wait on customers. She would much rather just work on office things. Yeah. And, so she's very introverted, except with us family. She can laugh like no other. She's so much fun. So when all this happens, my mom is really amazing at organizing and planning for the future. And, she helps me teach my daughter's school on Fridays, and she's got the school year planned, months in advance. And she's, sets up a cool school place for them. Like, she's good at planning, organizing future things. She didn't have that opportunity to plan for the future, okay, what are we going to do? Whatever. During that whole beginning time, it was one foot in front of the other. She and I would talk about that when we would get to the cake shop. It was like our legs felt full of lead. Like, I just didn't want to go in there. It was so scary. Like, you didn't know who was going to hate us today, who was going to spit on the windows. It was just, and so for my mom, she couldn't organize it. She couldn't set, okay, this is when we'll deal with this. And so she really had to just push forward one foot in front of the other and just be there. And my mom has always been an amazing prayer warrior. I know that if I go to her house at any time, I always feel like I'll walk in and she'll be sitting in her chair with her Bible open. That is just how that's how I picture her when I was a kid. That's how I picture her, either at the table or in her chair, reading the Bible, talking with God. And obviously she does more than that, but that's how I picture her.
That's ingrained in your memory.
And so, so I feel like through that, obviously, even though she was already a prayer warrior, it just way rocketed because praying was like our breath, it was praying through everything because you just didn't know. So my mom, they always say behind the man is the wife, and that is true, but the both of them have had to take care of each other because my dad had to lift her up to help her because here all of a sudden he's an outgoing person that loves, getting to speak and loves getting to hear people's stories, and my mom doesn't want to do that. And so he had to, when he's being called up to do all these things, she has to fight I've got to go be with, and sometimes she can stay home, sometimes she travels. And so it has disrupted her life, but has been just like the rest of us. She would tell you that she wouldn't change a thing either. So all of us had to grow amazingly in our faith, even though we all loved the Lord, especially my parents. It just, and through it all, she ended up having a stroke. It just the pressure. I can't even describe the amount that my mom had to undergo because of who she is. It was just an awful lot. But thankfully, she. There were some amazing neurologists there, and she was released a few days later. Out of the ICU or out of the emergency, and she never even had to get a room. And they were telling us to say goodbye to her that first day because it was such a huge stroke. Wow. So God is just
Praise
good.
The Lord for that. Yes.
And another Samaritan's Purse, they came behind us on that and then really took part in supporting my mom and dad after that, helping, just knowing they needed rest and stuff like that. So people have come alongside my parents to help them to not have to worry about financial burdens in the beginning, and just to have time set aside so they could rest and be away from people who knew about everything. So they, so my mom has had to adjust to a whole new life, and she's done it very well. And is still there, still helping my kids, still working at the shop, still just being mom. So
that's beautiful. Okay, so take us back in 2012, right? Is that when it all kicked off? Okay. What was your life like? You have 3 daughters.
Yeah.
So how old were they? Tell us about that.
Okay. So I do have 3 daughters. One of them, the one that's here with us today, Brielle, she wasn't even born. So she wasn't even on the horizon at that time. I had, in fact, when they came in, we were getting ready to have my middle daughter's first birthday party, and she's now 14. So it was like
the day?
It was like that weekend or whatever. So which was,
oh my gosh,
looking back, was really a frustrating time too, because I was like, we had planned her little party with all the family, and the family was all talking about what just happened at the cake shop while we were at a restaurant celebrating her birthday, and I was just like, this is not the right time.
You're like hello.
This is my daughter's first birthday. But at the same time, looking back, I'm like, yep, wouldn't change it. But
and she didn't know any different, probably.
No, of course, she's 1. And then my oldest daughter was 3 at the time. And so, and then Brielle wasn't even there yet. And so when it all started, I was married. I'm actually divorced now. So my husband was watching us. We were going through this, and actually during that time, shortly after that, I was pregnant, and we lost our baby during that time. And so my walk with the Lord before the guys came in was very distant. And working for my dad, whatever he says goes at the shop. So I would, of course, told them, no, we don't make cakes for same-sex weddings. And I would have smiled and just been like, yeah, I'm sorry, and if they had any problem, we would, Dad, can you come talk to them, whatever. And then, but walking outside of the doors of our cake shop, I had gay friends that I thought about later. Would I have actually, if they said, hey, you want to come to my wedding this weekend or whatever, would I have been like, sure, of course? Or would I have been like, hey, I can't support that? And I knew without a doubt that I would have been like, yeah, sure, of course. Because my priorities were not, even though I was saved, I definitely wasn't walking close with the Lord. And so that night, I got my Bible open and I started, well, what does God say about homosexuality? And so I'm reading, just like starting to crave everything he says. And okay, so what does he say about this and that, and abortion and marriage and how to raise your kids? And I just couldn't get enough. And so just really started reading the Bible, and just like my faith and my love for Jesus just started growing and growing. And I think my dad writes about it in his book, but he says like that I was sleepwalking. It was like I was there, but I wasn't there.
Right.
And then as soon as this happened, and he'll say he was the same, we all just kind of woke up and we're like, whoa, we have to deal with this with ourselves, on how we can't just say we love the Lord. We actually are we claiming him as Lord, or is he just our rescuer for right now?
So this has basically been your kids' childhood.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. This is all they know. They don't know life before the cake shop.
Right. So how has this impacted your little family life? I mean, as far as your girls, how have you seen them, grow in their faith? Or this is an open question.
Yeah,
what do you see going on?
I am so thankful that they have lived through this.
Yeah.
That this is their life. I am so thankful, because a lot of families, they have to teach their children how to stand up for their faith. They have to teach them how to love the Lord, what it's like, what persecution's like, what it's like to see variety in Christian beliefs, like, people saying they're Christians, but are they actual followers of Christ, or seeing just the difference of walks between followers of Christ, seeing different places where people are at, knowing that everybody has a story, that God does, in fact, love every single person, even the ones who hate us, especially those are the ones that, my dad will tell you, he and my mom still are praying for David and Charlie's salvation. And, just there's so many things that they have gotten to see just being in the cake shop, and things that most kids will never see. They've also been able to meet amazing people because of people wanting to hear my dad's story. Just, we're sitting here right now. We wouldn't have known you at all had this not happened. We wouldn't have known the folks at Focus on the Family. We wouldn't have known, Franklin Graham with Samaritan's Purse. Like, just all these people who have come in to say, hey, we love the Lord and we love you. And so my kids feel love from an amazing amount of places and people all around the world. And so, growing up, I often say somebody needs to interview my kids someday, because they've been silently watching this whole thing.
Yes.
And as little kids, we do our school at the cake shop 3 days a week. And so,
so they are really seeing it.
They've seen everything. So people come in, customers, people come in to meet my dad, people come in that don't like my dad, so they've seen all kinds of stuff. And they've also had to have their schoolroom, which is the cake shop front area, totally turned into, okay, Grandpa's doing an interview, you got to go do your school in the back, or so they've been moved aside and pushed here and had to go there and do this, and so someday I would love it if they could be interviewed or asked about it. My oldest has assured me she is not a speaker. She does not really want to do that, but she's amazing. She works with kids and everything, so she'd be great with it. But they're all their story is something someday that I hope that they get to share or to write down or something. But so Summit, my oldest, she's the one who remembers the most of it, because obviously, and she was there the day my dad got, I would say, our biggest death threat. And that was somebody called him, said, hey, I'm coming. I've got a gun and I'm going to blow your head off, and told my dad. And so you could say, oh, sure, you're coming, whatever. But he was giving specific streets. And this would have been 2013, maybe, pretty early on. Yeah. Maybe even 2012. I don't remember the date, but I know she was 4. So in that time. And but he would keep calling, I'm at this street, this is where I'm at, I'm coming, and I'm going to blow your head off. So my dad, of course, called the cops to have them come, and he came down, and Summit and I, we were downstairs in the lower part of our cake shop. I was filling cakes or whatever, and he said, Lisa, I need you to stay down here. Some guy just said he's coming and he's going to blow my head off. And my dad's shaking. Got to tell you. And he's like, I want you to stay down here no matter what happens. okay. And at this time, my middle daughter was asleep in a little pack and play we had this like storage, which is also the girls call their clubhouse when they were littler. And anyway, so it's a big room. So I would put their pack and play in there when they were little, and that's where they take naps and stuff. And so she was asleep there, and that was up on the main floor where the main shop is, but kind of hidden away. So we tell nobody that she's up there, basically.
Yeah.
And so Summit and I just had to stay down. And I remember Summit asking me, she's like, why does somebody want to kill Grandpa? And, I think about it now because I've been asked about it. It's like,
right.
You don't get into a theological discussion with your 4-year-old, they practice homosexuality, and homosexuality is against what the Bible says. And this is what it is. And this is, say, well, some people don't like Grandpa or what did I say? Told her, well, Grandpa really loves Jesus, and some people don't like that. And so they get mad at him for
answer.
And that's it. That's your answer there. And I was like, okay. So,
and that's what she could handle at that moment.
Oh, for sure. I mean, what else? And she's okay. Yeah. And I remember just watching her as she grew up through it, and she wrote a letter to him. He did some interview, and they asked if any of us could write letters of what we would like to tell him. And she wrote this amazing letter about how he has put away his idols so that he can follow Jesus, so that he can be a good grandpa, and just this really sweet letter. But yeah, so she's grown up watching Grandpa just stand up, and that is who he is. And and she's been doing ministry with Child Evangelism Fellowship for 5 years. She teaches kids the gospel, loves the Lord. She wants to work in crisis pregnancy. Here, she's a senior this year, so when she graduates, that's one of her goals, because she would love to work in crisis pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And all of that, I think, comes from being able to watch Grandpa and watch all these people that have come in. She is, we got to go to the Creation Museum, and she loved watching the whole pro-life section, looking through all that. Like, getting to see other Christians that are so strong in their faith has just encouraged her. And then my middle daughter was obviously 1 when it all started, and she was, she would take things very differently. She would get angry or cry, but she is just the way that she loves her Bible, and the way that she loves, like, she won't ever be somebody, I don't think, to go out. She did ministry with Child Evangelism Fellowship for 1 summer. She loved it, but that was good for 1 summer. She will follow Jesus just in such a quiet, simple, amazing way. Mm-hmm. She would tell you, if you ask her, what's your favorite book in the Bible? It's Revelation. Revelation 5 is her favorite chapter. I don't know, but she's interested in end times and God coming back. And she goes, I used to be afraid. And my other daughter will tell you that too. After she read Revelation, she's like, I used to be afraid. Now I'm excited, and so they love him so much. Yeah. And they want to do what is right. Mm-hmm. Ever definitely, she has an engineer brain, so I don't know what God is going to do with that. Right now, she didn't come with us because she's actually in an aeronautics class, because everything building, planes, engines, wires, she loves all that. So I don't know. God will use it somehow. Yeah. And then Brielle, she actually got to lead a little kid in our neighborhood, because we always are trying to reach out to the kids in our neighborhood. She was able to lead him to the Lord, and she's not shy. She loves Jesus, and she wants to share her faith. And she's sitting right here now, and I'm trying to think of all the amazing things I could say about her, because all my girls are they love the Lord. They love me. They love their grandpa. They love their dad. When they pray at night, just how they pray for people, it's just... it's hard to describe, but just hearing their maturity in the Bible. And there are so many things, like, they know what abortion is. They know what homosexuality is. They know all these things, and they've heard just about every topic you can imagine that so many kids don't hear. But yet, I'm so thankful, because I didn't have to find time to teach them about these things. They were getting it. It was life lessons constantly. And so just watching them sit in the back and listen to customers come in, they hear everything. So kids have excellent hearing. Mm-hmm. Excellent.
When they want it.
When they want it. When they don't want it, it's turned off, and there's hello. But yeah, so they've seen it all. They've been all over with us traveling. When my dad goes places, he usually takes all of us with him. So we come in this big entourage.
Yes,
so they have
so
seen
fun.
and met, and so they're all very strong in their faith, even for being so young. So.
Yeah. Amazing memories. Well, and I like how you were describing your second daughter as like, she's probably gonna live a quiet, faithful life, which is actually what a lot of us will live, but still requires the courageous choices. And so what would you say to our listeners out there, who are not in your situation, but you weren't in that situation either until all of a sudden you were.
Yes.
So what would you say to our listeners out there, like about this, about doing the right thing, about being faithful and being courageous even in the little moments?
Well, my dad said something, and he had said it often, and I think he's recently revised it, like made it a little different. He used to say, you draw a line in the beginning and you don't cross it. So when David and Charlie came in, it was not a big deal for my dad to say, no, I can't make that cake for you. I can't create a same-sex wedding cake, because he'd already been in the habit of obedience. And this was something that he had already decided not to do. So for him, it wasn't like, oh, what do I do? It was like, he was just being obedient.
Right.
And so you draw your line early on, don't cross it. But as he's seen in life and everybody's stories, he's like, you draw your line. If you happen to cross it, get back to the other side. And that's
forgiveness.
That's what God is there for. He is his grace and his forgiveness. And so I feel all like, yeah, I'm just an awesome daughter of Jack. But the stuff that nobody sees is me crossing that line and then having to get back over and over again. And my kids watching me struggle and saying you're sorry to your kids so often. And then I don't know, like I was messaging a friend of mine this morning knowing I was coming here. I was like, it's called Strong Woman. I am not a strong woman. I don't know why they want me to be on this podcast. And she said she was trying to encourage me that I'm strong because we've stood. Even when we fall, we're still standing, and I still don't feel strong, just so you know.
Yeah.
I love to talk. I love to encourage people, but it is every day. It's I think the biggest thing I've ever heard and want to pass on to anybody is stay reading the Bible. And I know it's a terrible phrase, but the fake it till you make it. Sometimes I don't feel like reading my Bible, but you open it and you read it and God will use it. And it is our lifeline. We do not have all our self-help books and all the friends in the world and the podcasts and everything are not going to get us through that sin or those dark nights when we're really struggling, or the decisions we have to make. The Bible, God bringing his word to our minds in that time is what we need. Like all my girls have gone through Awana. My youngest is, this is her last year of Awana. Maybe she'll go again. I don't know. But they all help in Awana now. But I still remember the verses I learned in Awana, and I'm so thankful. Mine are all King James in my head.
Right.
But, I still hear those verses. God will bring them in. So that's my biggest thing is stay in the word. Don't think that is something that you don't have time for.
Right.
You have to have time for that.
That's
you
so
have
good.
to. Even if it's one verse, you have to have time for
Right.
God's word. So.
Right. Such good advice. What have you learned about God through all of this?
Oh, I'm so glad he's forgiving. I've learned that my sins are no less than those that came into the shop, and that I really had a very messed up version of what sin is and everything. So I think the biggest thing is that God's love is, like the song, he loves a wretch like me. It's just because it's like each one of us, we were all lost. And when we place our trust in Jesus, our sin is all equal and he forgives it all the same. And when we sin again, because like 1 John talks about to the believers that when you confess your sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us. So we are still sinning, but he is still faithful and forgiving us, because through all of this, my dad is still a sinner. My mom is we're all still sinners, but we have the Holy Spirit in our lives that is speaking to us and helping us that when we do fall, we know we bring it back to God. And never once did he stop being our Father. Once we've trusted in him, we are his children. And, I try and explain to kids when I'm teaching kids that, if you do something against your mom, say you broke her beautiful vase, and you hit it, she finds out, whatever, you lied to her, something. Did you stop being her child because you sinned against her, because you did something wrong? No, you're still her kid. Is your relationship with her a little strained? You can't be honest with her because you haven't told her about this? Yeah, so what you do is you tell her about it. Like we tell God, we tell him what we've done. Though he already knows it, us telling him makes our relationship open with him again, so then we're ready to hear what he has to say. But he never stops being our Father just because we sinned. And so that he loves everybody, that he's so forgiving is awesome.
So I know I've heard so many stories about people who have been deeply impacted by your dad and by your family and this whole story, this whole journey, because it didn't stop with that one couple, because then there's been other cases that have been brought, and the whole journey has been like 14 years, 13?
Yeah, 13. This last July was 13.
13 years. And so it's been a huge chunk of y'all's life, a huge chunk. But anyway, I've heard so many stories of people who've been so impacted, and I'm sure you hear them all the time. Well, is there one that sticks out that you could share with us?
I've heard like famous stories, or like people that the world knows or more in the public eye that have been affected, which is just blows my mind.
Right.
Seriously, my dad and I are like, what?
Yeah.
Anyways, but like some more personal stories that I've heard in the cake shop. For example, one time I got a phone call. It was during I think either we had, we got accepted to the Supreme Court, or I don't remember. It was one of these big days where we had a lot of people. And I answered the phone, or like it was one of those times where my dad or I were answering the phone.
Yeah.
That happens sometimes when it gets really busy. So I'm now on the can answer, but we still try and protect. But he will protect me even so. Anyways, so I answered the phone, and it was actually from a sailor in the Navy, and he was out on a ship. It was in the South Pacific, and it was like 2 a.m. his time.
Wow.
But he had been listening to the radio or something while he was on duty, and so he had to wait until he was off duty that he could call us, because he just wanted us to know how much he was so thankful, and just hearing it just encouraged him to be stronger in his faith. And I just remember going like, are you kidding me?
Like on the other side of the world?
What? Yeah. And one of my favorite things is when we get older vets that come in, that and you see these really tough men who have fought in wars, who have served our country, and big tough guys crying when they meet my dad, because they're like, we fought for freedoms and our freedoms are being taken away. Thank you so much for standing up so we can still have our freedoms. And just watching them be so affected by a baker,
Right.
And then my most personal story to me is this lady, Sharon, comes into our shop, and she and her husband, they heard about our story, and so started coming in. And when she came in, that was right like her second or third time in was right when I had lost my baby, and I hadn't told anybody yet. She came in when I knew I was pregnant, and so I got to tell her. But she was, besides my family, and she was the first one to find out that we had lost the baby. And she was in just a couple weeks ago, little old lady. Aww. And little, seriously, she comes like to here on me. She's very short.
Yeah.
But she still is like this encouragement to me, because through all this that's going on, she came around and she hugged me, she encouraged me, and it was like getting to tell a customer that I didn't even know a year before something so intimate about my life, because I knew we shared our faith, and she loved the Lord, and for some reason I just told her, and so she has ever since then steady customer and always encouraging me, and just was such a sweet strength for me. And that was just such an odd thing that it was a customer, somebody who was basically a stranger, but is definitely not anymore a stranger. So
yeah, this sort of thing really binds you with people. Unexpected friendships
yes,
too.
for sure.
Okay, 2 more questions, Lisa. 1, what books are you reading?
I was thinking about this because I saw that you had asked that, and I was like, oh, nothing I'm super proud of. But I'm actually reading a biography of James Garner. That's what I'm reading right now.
Yeah.
But biographies are my favorite. Some of my most favorite books are books about martyrs, or those that haven't been martyred, but they're stories of going through persecution and everything. I love reading books about celebrities that gave their lives to the Lord. My favorite all-time book are between 2, and I've read it so many times, is Gavin MacLeod, from the Love Boat, the captain of the Love Boat, Gavin MacLeod, his journey to becoming a Christian and how he led Ted Knight to the Lord. Also, just actors you would never see because I love his story.
Yeah.
And then I also love Phil Vischer from VeggieTales. His story of his, Me, Myself, and Bob is such an awesome book. And that's just, again, with business, taking it for yourself and then realizing it's a mess unless you let God run it the way he wants to. And so those are my favorite kind of books, biographies, any real stories about real people that God uses or changes, and then they get to anyway, so.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm not reading anything awesome except for the Bible. But so
that's okay.
It's a biography.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, last one. What woman from history would you like to have coffee with?
I thought of 2.
Okay.
And one is not gone. She's still alive, but she definitely made history. That would be Gracia Burnham. She wrote the book In the Presence of My Enemies. Her and her husband were hostages for a year, and then as they were getting rescued, he was shot on that day, their rescue, and killed. And so she... her story is that, I just love her story because they were missionaries and they were actually just on an anniversary vacation and were taken hostages then. And she realized how ugly she was as a Christian, being put through this year-long thing of traveling through the jungle, through war, and just in the Philippines. It's a crazy story. And but her story is just like, she was not the strong Christian woman that she would have told everybody she was. Having a dad who was a pastor, and she's in missions, and wonderful kids, and just seeing how when the trial came, how horrible she was. And then having her husband encourage her while they were going through it, to lean on God's word, and they didn't have God's word. So if they could get any part of it, rehearsing verses they knew. But then her story, as she came out and listening to her story over and over, she's one of the women in my world that I'm just like, if I could meet, I would love to meet her, and I would love to sit down and have coffee with her and thank her for being a regular woman who God used so mightily, especially in my life and thousands others. But she works now with Ethnos 360, which used to be, I can't remember what it used to be, but anyways, love to have coffee with her.
Okay.
Love to. And the woman at the well, I would love to sit down and ask her, were you totally embarrassed? I mean, were you thinking, man, this was the wrong day to come and get some water, and just the questions I would ask her. Having a life myself that was not following the Lord, how God can just transform you from your sin, and her excitement after she left him to just go tell everybody, what boldness that she had immediately, because when she goes back and tells everybody, that means she's also letting them know her past, her history. If they didn't already know, which most of them did, they know now. And I would love to sit down and just pick her brain about that day and what was going through her mind.
Yeah, me too. I love that story. And it's so tender. I just love how tender Jesus is with her.
Yeah.
And beautiful. Lisa, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
This was so fun.
Yeah, so fun.
All right, listeners, see you next week.